We all know Japan for neon skylines and sushi, but hidden islands hold landscapes older than written history. Yakushima shelters cedars, estimated at 7,000 years, trunks braided with moss. Lake Mashu once recorded water clarity beyond 40 meters, a mirror so pure, clouds disappear. Ishigaki's Kabira Bay nurtures black pearls and coral gardens that glitter like hidden treasure. Ishigaki Island's Shiraho Coral Reef harbors one of the densest, oldest living coral communities left on Earth. Do you know Kabira Bay yields the island's famed black pearls, and its emerald shallows conceal living coral gardens, visible from glass-bottom boats? From those shallow reefs, the coastline folds into mangrove forests, where tide channels stitch the sea to the land, and newborn fish find sanctuary. Local fishermen still navigate these channels by memory, trailing nets where currents bring rare juvenile sea turtles to rest. On the windward side, limestone bluffs shelter caves whose mineral formations trap island legends and fossilized coral that whisper ancient sea levels. Those same currents carry bioluminescent plankton into dark bays, turning night paddles into floating constellations mirrored on the water. Villages like Shiraho and Aragusuku connect reef life to human craft, where pearl farmers, divers, and potters shape daily ritual around the sea. From village docks, trails climb to panoramic ridges where sugarcane fields give way to distant silhouettes of neighboring Yaeyama Isles. Takatomi's preserved streets and red-tiled houses feel like an echo of the maritime trade routes that once brought spices and stories here. Each path leads naturally back to the water, as if the island itself funnels every curiosity toward its reefs, bays, and hidden coves. To step onto Ishigaki is to follow a living chain of ecosystems and human traditions that hinge on a single, hostily beautiful ocean. The Kiso Valley cradles a ribbon of ancient cedar and cypress forests whose trunks have marked routes through the Kiso Mountains for over 1,000 years. Do you know Kiso Valley still preserves entire stretches of the Nakasendo, the Edo period inland highway where weathered post towns freeze time between river and ridge? Wooden merchant houses, lacquered shop fronts, and stone gutters survive in Magome and Tsumago, where timber and travelers once threaded the same narrow paths. Walk those cobbles, and you're stepping through a living museum of craftsmanship, from hand-planed beams to the beater shingles that shrug off decades of rain. Fog clings to the Kiso River in mornings, turning bridges into silhouettes and making the valley feel like a painting you can enter. Local carpenters still season wood the old way, using time and patience to shape pillars that hold centuries of memory. Seasonal color is dramatic here. Spring maple blossoms, summer moss, autumn crimson slopes, and winter silent snow that muffles every footstep. Small ryokan and family-run inns offer charcoal-fired baths and recipes passed down since the post-station era, anchoring visitors to local rhythms. The valley's conservation is deliberate. Residents curb modern facades, so the corridor remains coherent from town to town. That sense of continuity explains why walkers on the Nakasendo still feel the same cadence as merchants and samurai in older maps. You can trace timber trails up toward Kiso Fukushima, where wider river bends open into harsher mountain routes and old shrine festivals still drum life into the valley. From there, the path climbs toward the rugged silhouette of Mount Ina, hinting at higher passes and the next stories beyond the Kiso Fold. Every gate, signboard, and preserved gatehouse is a clue to how transport, faith, and forestry shaped central Japan's spine. Walking here is less about sightseeing than listening. Each creek, each river rush narrates a 100-year conversation between people and trees. Slow travel in the Kiso Valley rewires your sense of scale, shrinking modern noise until wood grain and weather become the calendar. Leave the valley by the old post road, and you find the foothills opening toward Matsumoto and the wide plains beyond, an invitation to follow history outward. The Seto inland sea cradles more than 1,700 islands and creates one of the world's most complex inland seascapes, where narrow straits and calm bays produce microclimates that sustain unique island cultures. Do you know the Seto Inland Sea is home to art islands like Naoshima and Toshima, where contemporary museums and outdoor installations sit beside fishing harbors, transforming ordinary coastlines into living canvases? Here, centuries-old salt pans and seaweed farms lace the shorelines, and small-scale aquaculture has shaped both the cuisine and the rhythms of daily life. The sea's gentle tides allowed communities to develop terraced shores and intricate oyster and nori cultivation techniques you won't find at the same scale anywhere else in Japan. From the deck of a local ferry, you can watch fishing boats weave through a patchwork of islands, while landforms and light change with every angle of sun, an optical richness artists have chased for generations. Even the bridges that connect clusters of islands, like the Shimanami Kaido, were built not just for transport, but as a ribbon that threads history, art, and mingling culture across sea and land. In spring, the hills above the coves erupt with cherry blossoms that mirror themselves perfectly in sheltered waters, doubling the landscape in a rare natural duet. Every ferry crossing becomes a lesson in geology and human adaptation. Volcanic outcrops, sandbars, and tidal flats tell stories of shifting land and livelihoods shaped by the sea. By the time you reach Naoshima, or a tiny fishing quay, the Seto Inland Sea has already rewritten what maritime life can be. Part museum, part market, entirely lived in and waiting to be discovered. Mount Daisen rises from the Chugoku Plain as one of Japan's few remaining stratovolcanoes that supports both alpine tundra and subtropical forests on its slopes. Do you know that its summit hosts pockets of relict plant species left over from the last ice age, species found nowhere else in Honshu? For centuries, pilgrims and monks have traced the mountain's ridgelines, leaving behind ancient trails and temples woven into cedar groves. The ancient Daisen-ji temple complex at the mountain's base hides carvings and rituals that map the spiritual geography of the region. In spring, the lower slopes explode with azaleas and wildflowers, while the higher ridges hold snow until late May, creating sharp ecological edges. Skiers in winter carve through powder that glows blue in the low light, a contrast to the verdant valleys below in summer. The next segment will trace those waterways downriver, revealing how Daisen's snowmelt shapes regional cuisine and coastal livelihoods. Tales from local fishermen echo mountain myths, blending ecology with folklore in markets that sell river trout and sea bream. We will follow a single watershed from summit to sea to discover how a single mountain sustains both mountain temples and coastal kitchens. Join us as Mount Daisen's slopes hand off their secrets to the fishermen and farmers who translate mountain weather into daily life. A sweep of glittering sand and an almost unheard-of double rock formation gives Kuri Island a coastline unlike almost any other in Japan. Do you know Kuri Island's Heart Rock hides a tidal arch that frames the Okinawan horizon and has been carved by currents for thousands of years? Crossing Kuri Bridge, you feel the sea widen into bands of emerald and sapphire that shift with the sun. The bridge itself becomes a spine that ties this tiny isle to Nago on Okinawa's main island, making Kuri both secluded and startlingly accessible. Locals still haul in catches, using traditional nets in shallow reefs, where coral gardens sustain an astonishing density of life. That same reef extends like a living highway toward Motobu, inviting snorkelers and researchers to follow currents that map the marine corridors of the region. On Kuri, you can stand on a limestone promontory and watch migrating flocks that trace a route north toward Cape Hedo. Those birds continue the island's story, linking its skies to the headlands where ancient Ryukyuan clans once watched for ships. Families picnic beneath lantern-printed pines, while elders recall folktales of lovers who once met beneath the Heart Rock. Their tales thread the island to nearby villages where craftwork and songs keep a centuries-old culture remarkably alive. At low tide pools, iridescent fish dart over seagrass beds that support rare nesting grounds for sea turtles. Researchers from Nago to the northern parks have traced those nesting paths and now work with villagers to protect fragile hatchlings. Even the island's small keys serve up citrus grown nearby, a reminder that Kuri's flavor is fed by the same winds that sweep across the Motobu Peninsula. Drivable roads connect these pockets of coast, turning a day trip into a narrative that moves from bridge to Heart Rock, to reef and back again. Hidden coves reveal tide-sculpted stairways leading to secret snorkeling spots, where schools of striped fish perform synchronized ballets. Those coves feed into a chain of experience, cafes, craft stalls, and lookout points that make Kuri both an intimate refuge and a gateway to Okinawa's northern reaches. By night, the Milky Way spills overhead, with a clarity seldom found near Japan's cities, giving the island a primitive map of the sky. This darkness protects nocturnal life and invites quiet conversation about how to balance tourism with the fragile rhythms kept by coral and tonic. Nachi waterfall plunges 133 meters in an unbroken drop, making it Japan's tallest single-drop waterfall. It spills from a sheer granite face above the ancient Kumano coast, its spray feeding sacred pools below. For 1,000 years, pilgrims have knelt where the mist settles, believing the falls house Osei. The roar of the water is woven into prayers at nearby Kumano Nachi Taisha and the wooden halls of Seigantoji. A bright red torii and a 3-story pagoda stand framed against the white curtain of water, a scene captured on folding screens and postcards alike. But the image betrays something stranger. The waterfall's flow is tied to deep underground springs that keep it constant through dry seasons and typhoons. Pilgrims practice misoji, ritual purification beneath the cascade, letting the cold stream erase sins asked by ancestors. The path to the falls climbs cedar-shaded steps, once trod by emperors, each turn revealing a different angle of the thundering drop. In autumn, the cliff is rimmed with flaming maples. In winter, ice ribs form like frozen music on the rock face. From the viewing platform, you can see how the waterfall feeds the Kumano River and traces a route pilgrims will follow across the Ki Peninsula. Nachi is not only a spectacle, but a hinge in a landscape of faith that links mountain shrines, coastal sanctuaries, and village shrines. Walk below the falls and you can imagine the procession of garbed pilgrims heading toward Hongu and Hayatama, the 3 great Kumano shrines. Local legends tell of dragons and mountain deities that once guarded the falls, and offerings still appear in hollowed rock niches. Photographers chase the perfect mist-lit moment, but the clearest truth is how the waterfall shapes local rituals, festivals, and even the regional climate. One of the planet's clearest subtropical seas washes the beaches and coral walls of the Kerama Islands, where underwater visibility can exceed 30 meters. Do you know the Kerama Islands' famously deep Kerama blue creates optical illusions that let divers see schools of fish like moving constellations and coral at depths that look unusually close. Tiny car-free islands like Tokashiki and Zamami hold secret coves where green sea turtles return year after year to feed and nest. Humpback whales slice through the winter waters around Kerama, drawing scientists and silent admirers to witness their courtship songs in nearshore breeding grounds. The archipelago's coral reefs host surprising biodiversity, including rare pillar corals and reef fish that paint the seascape with impossible colors. Local fishermen still follow ancient currents and moon calendars, passing on knowledge that links the islands to Okinawa's larger maritime culture. From Naha's bustling harbor, a short ferry ride transforms city noise into an almost otherworldly silence broken only by surf and seabirds. That quick crossing is the connective thread from Okinawa's urban life to the Kerama's fragile marine wilderness, where conservation rules are enforced to protect the reefs. Snorkelers and free divers cherish these waters because visibility and gentle currents reveal whole living ecosystems in one breath. Even on land, the islands surprise. Windswept cliffs shelter rare subtropical plants and small hamlets whose festivals still honor sea spirits. Recent conservation efforts have created no-take zones that allow fish populations and corals to rebound in striking ways. Scientists now use the Kerama reefs as living laboratories to study coral resilience against warming seas and to test restoration techniques. Visitors who think they've seen Okinawa's beauty elsewhere often find the Kerama Islands redefine expectation with a purity that feels almost scientific. And as you follow the shoreline from one islet to the next, you'll sense the chain linking local traditions, marine life, and modern conservation into a fragile, hopeful whole. In the next segment, we will dive deeper into a single coral canyon and meet a researcher whose discovery is changing how we protect these seas. Stay with us as the current carries us from Kerama's blues toward the next island story that connects history, people, and the ocean. Iya Valley shelters one of Japan's rarest living structures, hand-woven kazurabashi vine bridges that span narrow gorges carved by the Yoshino River. Do you know Iya Valley still rebuilds those bridges each year from wild kudzu and willow, preserving techniques that connect villagers to centuries of mountain craft? Morning mist fills the ravines, concealing terraced fields and stone huts that cling to steep slopes like centuries-old postcards of rural life. Isolation kept local dialects, medicines, and festivals intact, creating cultural flora as unique as the botanical diversity that carpets the valley floor. From the vine bridges, a narrow road leads to Oboki Gorge, where the Yoshino's whitewater cuts granite into dramatic chutes and plunges these seas. That contrast, gentle terraces against brutal river force, draws kayakers, poets, and scientists studying how geology and human life interlock in tiny, powerful ways. Mount Tsurugi watches the valley, and pilgrims on the Shikoku 88 temple route still leave offerings, linking spiritual paths to the valley's living rituals. Elders will share stories of hermits and outlaws who once used the mountain's secrecy to trade herbs, skills, and survival knowledge across generations. Today, artisans revive vine weaving, smoke-cure tea leaves, and repair slate roofs, turning fragile traditions into sustainable craft for newcomers and locals alike. Walk its cobbled lanes, and you'll see how one suspended bridge connects more than cliffs. It joins seasons, skills, and a stubborn determination to keep place and memory alive. Researchers prize Iya's mosses and ferns as refuges of ancient lineage. These small green archives of climates long vanished elsewhere in Japan. If you follow the valley's narrow road, each bend introduces a new secret, proving how a single mountain hollow can hold a nation's hidden histories. The valley teaches patience and practical knowledge. It rewards those who slow down. Lake Mashu in eastern Hokkaido is one of the world's clearest caldera lakes, with underwater visibility that has been measured at extraordinary distance. Do you know Lake Mashu often vanishes into a phantom fog, turning its mirror green surface into a perfect, silent circle that feels removed from time? Carved by volcanic fury, Mashu sits in a steep-walled crater whose depths plunge well over 200 meters, collecting cold, nutrient-poor water that keeps algae at bay. That scarcity of life is precisely why the water can reflect such pristine clarity, and why sunlight fractures into startling emerald tones when conditions align. Local Ainu stories treat Mashu as a living spirit, and for decades, authorities have tightly restricted access to preserve both its mystery and its fragile ecology. Visitors gaze from rim observatories rather than descend to the shore, learning to respect the lake's silence and its sudden rolling mists. Scientists who've sampled Mashu point to exceptional transparency. Measurements have recorded visibility that rivals the most famous clear lakes on Earth. But the lake's true spectacle is unpredictable. One morning of glass-like stillness can be swallowed by fog by afternoon, leaving whispers of green and shadow. Walk the rim trail, and you pass spruce and birch that cling to volcanic soil. Then notice how the vegetation changes as the landscape opens toward other volcanic basin outstants. From that sea ridge, the eye can travel to neighboring Lake Kusharo and Lake Akan, natural siblings linked by fire and ice across Hokkaido's wild interior. At the edge of Mashu, the air tastes colder, thinner, and somehow cleaner, a transition that prepares you for the next encounter. The bubbling thermal shores of Akan, where marimo moss balls drift below the surface. This spine of volcanic lakes stitches together Hokkaido's stories, geology, folklore, and living ecosystems, each place revealing a different chapter of the island's restless earth. Yet Mashu keeps its privacy. Even in summer, the number of visitors is limited, and photographers chase the rare moments when sunlight slices through mist to paint the caldera floor. When you finally see it clear, the color seems almost impossible. An intense, deep green framed by cliffs. An image that will redraw your memory of what a lake can be. And if you follow the volcanic arc south, you begin to trace Hokkaido's larger story, where geothermal vents feed hot spring towns and ancient forests shelter species found nowhere else. Mashu is not just a single wonder, but a hinge, the quiet point that connects frosted peaks, steaming springs, and the thawing seas beyond. Tottori sand dunes are Japan's largest coastal dunes and one of the few temperate migrating dune systems in East Asia. Do you know Tottori sand dunes conceal centuries of river sediment and ancient sea changes written in layers of sand? Walk across their rippled ridges and you'll find footsteps that vanish overnight as winds reshuffle the landscape. Hidden under those grains are fossils and artifacts that trace human movement along the Sea of Japan long before modern maps. Locals have tamed the dunes into a living playground with camel rides and sandboarding, borrowing desert rituals on a temperate shore. Yet not all of the dunes' surprises are tourist-ready. Scientists study migrating dunes here to forecast coastal change and preserve fragile habitats. Beside the shifting sand stands the Sand Museum, where sculptors carve titanic, temporary worlds from the very particles shaped by wet. Those sculptures, Mount Daisen and reborn each year, a reminder that permanence in Tottori is only ever an illusion. At sunrise, the sand glows like powdered gold, and at night, the same slopes frame a sky of stars over the Sea of Japan. If you trace the coastline northward, coastal cliffs and hidden estuaries reveal how the dunes feed marshes and local fisheries. The transition from sand to spruce forests is sudden near Mount Daisen, where volcanic soils trap moisture and life rebounds. That shift links the dunes to mountain temples and alpine streams, sketching a landscape where desert-like plains meet verdant highlands. Few places stitch such extremes so tightly, and rare ecological niches here support migratory birds and specialized plants. Elder residents recall roads swallowed and then revealed, local lore that maps the dunes' moods across generations. Researchers tag and track wind-blown particles to understand coastal migration, work that helps protect seaside towns. And for travelers, a guided climb offers a tactile lesson. Scoop a handful, and you hold centuries of geologic memory. From this granular archive, we will head inland, where cedar groves and historic shrines collect different stories of land and people. Each grain points the way, linking the seaside dunes to Tottori's mountains, temples, and the communities that live between them. Leaving the volcanic ash plains behind, the ferry slips toward Yakushima, an island where rain carves its own history. Do you know Yakushima shelters some of the oldest living trees on Earth, with giants like Jomonsugi, possibly older than 7,000 years? Those cedar titans stand in forests that merge subtropical palms and alpine vine scrub, compressed into a single rugged island. Mists and relentless rainfall, some valleys record decades of nearly continuous precipitation, have wrapped trunks in thick layers of moss and lichen. Hikers wind through Shiratani Unsuikyo's emerald ravines, where twisted branches drip like chandeliers and pools reflect impossible greens. Scientists call Yakushima a living laboratory because endemic species have evolved here in isolation, adapting to raw water and wind. You might pass a Yakushima macaque bobbing on a rock, or a shy Sisika deer emerging through bamboo, species found nowhere else in quite the same form. Rain here is not merely weather, but a sculptor. Boulders are smoothed, trails braided, and entire microclimates persist under perpetual cloud. Researchers catalog endemic ferns and insects that survive only under the canopy's constant drip, species invisible on the mainland. Yet Yakushima is not frozen in time. Islanders balance tourism, tradition, and conservation with a vigilance born from watching forests reclaim abandoned fields. Every visitor becomes part of a debate about access and preservation, a living question written along narrow cedar-lined tracks. When you step off the ferry, the island's humidity seems to rearrange your senses, sharpening colors, heightening sounds, slowing footsteps. Carry that slow rhythm onward, because from Yakushima, the voyage stitches into the neighboring archipelago, where ocean currents and mountain rain continue to shape Japan's quieter edges. Kegon Falls in Nikko plunges nearly 97 meters from the rim of a volcanic caldera, making its vertical drop one of Japan's most dramatic. Do you know, Kegon Falls was born when Mount Daisen's eruption dammed a valley to form Lake Chuzenji, and the lake's overflow now pours over the cliff. Beyond its height, Kegon is famous for the perfect circular plunge pool, carved into ancient basalt, a geological fingerprint of repeated freeze, thaw, and torrent. Visit in autumn, and the falling water becomes a silver column, framed by riotous maple that seems to change the very sound of the gorge. There is an old elevator cut into the rock that drops visitors down to a lower observation point, revealing the waterfall's thunder and mist from within the canyon. But the most surprising moment is when sunlight catches the spray and erupts into bands of color that locals call the Kegon Rainbow, a private spectacle for those who wait. Geology is only half the story. Shrine culture and pilgrimage routes in nearby Nikko have long treated the falls as a place of purification before visiting sacred sites. Walk from the falls toward the cedar-lined approach of Toshogu Shrine, and you can feel the landscape shift from raw water power to ordered human devotion. In winter, ice crowns the cliff, and the sound of falling water is muffled by snow, turning the same cliffs that roar in spring into enormous crystalline husks. Spring brings meltwater, and with it, an almost theatrical increase in volume that reveals the hidden channels carved beneath the woods above. Local folklore whispers of spirits that ride the spray and of poets who found entire poems in a single observation of the falls. Today, photographers and pilgrims alike still time their visits for dawn and dusk, when the light sculpts the water into shapes that change by the minute. From Kegon, a short drive leads to Risu Falls and then around the rim of Lake Chuzenji, stitching a route where geology, legend, and seasonal color unmelt in sequence. Each stop feels like a deliberate sentence in a larger story about how fire, water, and human reverence created the Nikko we see now. From the mirror-smooth reflection pools at the foot of Mount Fuji to the moss-clad trails of Yakushima, Japan stitches many landscapes into a single, living story. Every torii gate at Itsukushima seems to float like a punctuation mark between sea and ski-three, guiding us from Shinto shorelines into the quiet of ancient forests. Kyoto's temples fold history into everyday life, and those same rituals ripple outward to the lantern-lit lanes of Kanazawa and the coastal shrines of the Noto Peninsula. In Nara, tame deer wander temple grounds as if they remember an older pact between humans and the wild, a pact echoed by fishermen in the Seto inland sea. Hiroshima's Peace Park stands beside the resilient pulse of Miyajima's floating shrine, showing that remembrance and renewal can exist side by side. Northern Hokkaido throws open seasons with endless fields of bloom and the raw, primeval coastlines of Shiratoko, where land meets ocean in dramatic isolation. Tokyo then rewires expectation entirely, a metropolis where neon and centuries-old shrines share the same neighborhood and chance encounters rewrite a traveler's day. Move south, and the Ryukyu Islands of Okinawa trade skyscrapers for coral gardens and a language of sea that feels almost tropical, tying the archipelago into an oceanic chorus. Even the smallest alleys carry stories. Tea rituals in a Kyoto machiya ripple into lantern festivals in Hakayama and the quiet artistry of local craftsmen. Walk these pathways and you begin to sense a continuous thread: reverence for nature, an obsession with detail, and a willingness to remake the past into the present. So when you leave these islands, you don't simply take photographs. You take a pattern of tides, temples, and tenacious human kindness that will reshape how you notice the world. if one thing lingers more than any skyline or shrine, it's a quiet question. Which hidden corner will call you back first?